Hi everyone, welcome to the first of a new series of very short videos on how to identify forage to feed to your rabbits and your guinea pigs. I'm mainly going to chat about rabbits and mention rabbits because I run the rabbit sanctuary at Parsley's Warren, which is for elderly and special needs rabbits. So I'm actually making these videos as a way to try and entertain you and inform you, but also to try and raise some money for us while we're all suffering from the coronavirus shutdown. So the purpose of these videos is they're very short introductions to focusing on usually just one item of forage, one type of wild vegetation in each of them. So today we're going to be looking at hogweed, which is one of the most popular ones for rabbits at the moment, but we're also going to tell you a little bit about giant hogweed because that really worries people. A lot of people know that giant hogweed is very toxic and they're worried about making a mistake when they pick their hogweed. So I think that's really it from me, and I'm now going to just do some identification. Okay, so here we are in one side of my garden. This particular part of the garden is allowed to just grow wild for most of the spring and summer. Let's be frank, it's pretty wild most of the time. And in amongst all of the tall grasses, because this is quite a rich area and quite shady, it has a lot of hogweed, and here we are with it. We're going to talk about the Latin name for it because that is actually quite important. Don't want to put you off, but Latin names are important. So it grows quite tall at the moment, even though it's spring. We're probably, just about 80-90 centimetres, and it will start soon. I can't see any that have it, but soon it'll start sending up its central flower shoots. So it's quite a furry plant. Now that's one of the things about it. When you're looking at identification, don't just rely on your eyes, rely on feeling the plant, feeling whether it's shiny, whether it's furry, whether its stems feel smooth or rough, whether they feel like they've got a channel like celery has, all sorts of things about the plant. Even the smell of the plant is really important when you're identifying it. It's one of the ways in telling some toxic plants actually from non-toxic, is because a lot of toxic plants have a really rancid, horrible smell to them. Ooh, I can just see I'm filming my tootsies. We'll just move those out of the way. So here we are with the hogweed. And so this is a very typical one. It's just about to send up a flower shoot, actually, this one. If you follow your stem down, having identified your leaves, look at those slightly rounded edges to the leaves, look at the way in which the leaves, although they appear to be three different leaves, are actually one leaf which has divided into three. Can you see? You're not quite going back to the stem there. And then you go a bit further down, you've got two leaves coming from the stem opposite each other. Then again, they look like three leaves, but it's just the shape of them. And again, further down, another two coming off the stem, parallel to each other, or rather opposite to each other. And then going down into it, as we'd expect, it all comes from a central base. So if I was to pull too hard, actually I'd have to pull pretty hard on a mature plant like this, I would have the root up as well. And that is one thing you should never do. Don't go around in the wild uprooting plants. Even in your own garden, it's just a waste of hogweed. It means it won't grow again next year. So I'm now going to pick one of these. Oof. And another one. They do pick quite well, but as they get older, they can be a bit tougher. And let's have another further look at this round at the table. I've prepared a little table in the shade. Not that I don't like sunshine, I adore sunshine, but so that you can have a chance to have a really good look at things. So I've also put some books here, which is nice. So first of all, let's just have a little bit of a look more at this hogweed, not the giant hogweed. So I hope you can see it quite clearly now. It's very freshly picked, so it's not wilting at all. It's quite a a spring green, I would call it, quite a yellowy green in many ways. Sorry about the cockerels in the background, by the way. We're also a sanctuary for cockerels, more or less, believe it or not. We just keep whatever comes out of the eggs, basically. It's quite a furry feel to it. On the other side, it's really quite grey. So a kind of light grey green instead of a darker green. The stems also are quite furry. Now they do occasionally, just occasionally have, particularly as it matures, can you see it has quite a reddy tinge to part of it. But the key part about this is it is not blotchy. It's not like a rash. Although it's slightly red tinted, it's not blotchy as such. And like many plants, I'm going to talk about this with cow parsley, it has a celery look in section. I always call this celery. There we are. I think we're in focus now. So it has a kind of channel, if you see, running down it. And that's very easy to feel when you go to pick it. It's slightly rough. When it's younger, slightly furry, but it's not prickly as such. It doesn't hurt you or anything when you touch it. Here's a nice fresh green stalk of a younger plant with all those typical leaves, the fur, the opposing leaves. And there we are. Now, if you want to really firm up what you think it is, it's good to have, get this out of the shade, it's good to have a series of books that you can look at. This is one of my favourites on wildflowers. It's a very old book and you can get these very cheap on Amazon. It's quite a large one, this. One of the reasons I like this is although it divides things up according to their Latin names, it also has some very nice pictures. So this one compares, for example, all of the things that fall into the umbelliferas, as they were known, now the apiaceas, and including all your hogweeds, so that you can see, for example, you've got your normal hogweed here, and then just on the corner, because it is so very difficult to pick on, is actually a giant hogweed, and I'm going to tell you a bit more about that in a second. They also take the opportunity to compare it to wild angelica. It would be very difficult to mistake it to wild angelica, and a range of other umbelliferas, and all things like your cow parsleys, for example, are on the previous page. We're going to talk about cow parsley in another video. So books like this are very good. It then just refers you to a description on another page. Here we are, here's our hogweed, Heraculum. This one's Heraculum spondylium, which is different to your giant hogweed, which is related because it's also a Heraculum, but it has a different second part of its binomial. I don't want to put you off with all the Latin at this time. So it says it is unlikely to be confused with any other umbellifera, and that is true. It does grow up to 2 meters high, and that is why some people think, oh my goodness, this one's 2 meters high, it must be a giant hogweed. In fact, it's not. A giant hogweed will grow up to 3.5 meters, in fact even 5 meters tall, with stems up to 10 centimeters thick, as it says. So it's called hogweed because it used to be fed to hogs, but it also used to be fed to cows. So it's a very, very popular forage. I mentioned a couple of times that you might actually be worried about mistaking this for giant hogweed, which is in the same family, so it is related, but it is quite different and distinctive. I haven't got any giant hogweed growing anywhere near this area, so a bit of a minus point there in terms of comparing. However, I have printed out some photographs, and if you go on the web, you will find endless photographs of giant hogweed, mostly with people standing next to it completely astounded by how large it is. One of the main features is that it has a very blotchy stem. Even when it's young, it has a very blotchy stem. So here we are with the blotchiness. This is a photograph taken from a website. It also has It also grows enormous. This is one of the many, many photographs that you will see on websites with people standing in front of giant hogweed. That hogweed is not sort of in a pot or anything. This is actually, you know, growing. The bottom of it is at the bottom of this lady's feet, and it is simply enormous. You can also see, even on the photograph, the blotchy stems. But obviously one of the worries that people have is that, like all plants, it starts small. So even if by the time it's flowering it's enormous, how do you identify it when it's small? Well, one of the key points, and I think this photograph's quite good, one of the key points is that it has much spikier leaves than your normal hogweed. Can you see there? They're a spiky leaf. They don't have the same layout. They're not the same colouring, although true, this is a printed thing. But if you just compare the very rounded leaves of your normal hogweed with that much spikier look, and here I'm just going to pick one up that's blown away onto the grass. These are very much informal videos, so I hope you don't mind that. This is not some kind of skillful, put together over days kind of video, I'm afraid. So this is another one of very young, very, very young giant hogweed. And I think you can really tell the difference here with the spikiness as opposed to the roundness and that trefoil look that you've got to your leaves of hogweed. Don't forget also that even when young, the giant hogweed is going to have blotches where the leaves meet, where you have the segments on the stalks. So it's a very different plant indeed. It is also still relatively rare in England, apart from waste spaces and along the edges of, say, motorways and A roads, where I really recommend you do not go foraging anyway. So certainly I only know one plant within about 10 kilometres of here. So it's also notifiable. You can notify the council if you have it. I should say that giant hogweed, not to scare you too much, is very, very toxic. It will cause a huge rash. It will make your skin very, very light sensitive, and really that is why it is notified and people come along and destroy them afterwards. However, back to more jolly things, your normal hogweed, I hope you can all identify now. It's slightly furry, it has a spring green colour, slightly grey on the back, which is also furry. Its leaves are opposing, coming out from the stem, has that trefoil look, and it has the all-important celery-shaped stem if you look at it in section. So I think that's it for now. The other key thing about the hogweed, of course, is that were I to go and find one of the rabbits wandering around and proffer it, they would pig it down. The majority of rabbits are quite sensible with what they will and won't eat. So yeah, this one they will absolutely pig down. So before I end, just a short kind of advertisement. First of all, for the books that I have written for the Rabbit Welfare Association. These are available through the Rabbit Welfare Association website, Foraging for Rabbits and Gardening for Rabbits. And then also a short plug for our, I say, new sanctuary charity. We've actually been going about 20 years now. However, we have just officially set up as a charitable status. We haven't yet got our registration, and we are Parsley's Warren. And if you've enjoyed this video or found it educational, if you could, or educationally useful, if you would like to give a donation, hop over to Parsley's Warren, no apostrophe in Parsley's, we thought about that quite a lot, Parsley's Warren Facebook page, and I will put up my PayPal details. They're not at the moment under the name of Parsley's Warren. That's just because we're only just setting up. So from me and from Frank the cockerel, who's joined in at every moment, thanks very much. Our next one will be on cow parsley and how to tell the difference between cow parsley and hemlock. Thank you.